A scientist developed a genetic virus that could render its victims immortal, but the cost was steep. Once infected, the host's consciousness was wiped away, turning them into mindless monsters driven solely by the urge to kill and feed. However, one test subject managed to escape and climb to the top of a building over 100 meters tall. Just as he prepared to jump, the sound drew a crowd of curious onlookers, unaware that the horrifying zombie outbreak that would soon devastate Japan was about to begin. The middle-aged man convulsed violently, then rose in a grotesque, twisted posture. A woman standing nearby had no time to react before he lunged at her, tearing out her throat with a single bite. The brutal, blood-soaked scene shocked the crowd into scattering in terror. Unfortunately, the virus spread at an alarming rate. Within moments, dozens were infected and began attacking anyone in sight. The street quickly became an infernal nightmare. Seeing the horde charging toward them, Yamato grabbed his girlfriend Hoi and put her to safety. Both ran for their lives. Along the way, Hoi noticed a young woman lying on the ground. As a trained nurse, she couldn't ignore her, but by stopping, she drew a zombie toward them. To protect his girlfriend, Yamato leapt off the bridge, the zombie crashing down beside him. Luckily, the fall cushioned Yamato's impact, and he was not seriously injured. He scrambled to his feet, but the zombie, now alive again, began crawling after him. Just when things looked dire, an ambulance barreled into the zombie, sending it flying and sparing Yamato once more. But on the bridge, Hoi found herself targeted by another zombie. With no other choice, the two separated and fled on their own. In a single night, the virus swept across all of Japan. Within a week, the entire world had fallen. 5 years later, human civilization had collapsed completely, and only a small band of survivors still fought to stay alive. At the heart of the ruins stood two towering skyscrapers known as humanity's last hope. The area was highly stratified. Only those in power could live in the towers, while ordinary survivors took refuge in the underground levels beneath the buildings. Yamato had been lucky to survive the initial disaster, but for the last 5 years, he had been searching for his girlfriend, with no clue to her whereabouts. Finally, an information broker told him that the other tower was reserved for scientists and doctors working day and night on a vaccine. If Yamato's girlfriend was a nurse, there was a good chance she had been sent there, yet it seemed almost impossible for an ordinary person to reach the tower. The only entrance was surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by armed forces. Yamato, who had once worked at great heights as a high-rise construction worker, knew these skyscrapers often had secret passages. He decided to sneak in and try his luck. But the broker stopped him, claiming to know a safe route. Trusting him, Yamato was brought before the leader, Yuya. To his surprise, they were a gang specialized in extorting supplies from newcomers. At that moment, another survivor was dragged in before Yuya. Unwilling to hand over his supplies, Yamato fought back. Yuya drew a pistol, intending to kill Yamato, when suddenly Jiviki spoke up, saying that the underground tunnels where they lived were not fully built and that parts of the piping were still open. Hearing this, Yuya grew interested. He didn't want to remain trapped underground, constantly oppressed by those in the towers. Just then, one of the gang rummaged through Jiviki's backpack and was stunned by what he found. The bag was full of explosives. The broker remembered a recent warehouse robbery and realized that Jiviki, searching for his daughter, had planted the bomb to breach the tower and stage an assault. When the countdown hit 0, a car roared to life, crashed into the zombie horde, and barreled straight at the tower's outer wall. The explosion created a hole that immediately drew a swarm of zombies. Seeing an opportunity, Yuya quickly launched a counterattack to seize control of the tower. Alarms blared inside. The leader sent guards to block the breach with flamethrowers, holding the line. The zombie horde couldn't break through. They began tossing undead bodies into a deep pit, but the blood leaking from their corpses dripped through the piping into the underground camp, splattering on a woman's face. She quickly transformed into a zombie and attacked others in the camp. Panicked, the survivors tried to flee but had nowhere to go. Meanwhile, Yuya and his group were oblivious to the chaos below. They lifted a wooden plank, revealing a hidden passage. Had Javiki been telling the truth, they could use this route to reach the tower. But as they descended the corridor, guards spotted them. Yuya fired at one guard, but there were too many. The group had no choice but to flee. They took cover atop the stairs, waiting for the guards to approach. When the moment came, they launched an ambush, catching the guards off guard. During the skirmish, Yamato suddenly caught a familiar scent on one of the guards. After a hard battle, they finally defeated the guards. Yamato then found the perfume he had once given his girlfriend in a trash bin and burst into tears of joy. Before he could savor the moment, Javiki suddenly sensed something approaching. Looking up, they saw a horde of zombies flooding toward them. They counterattacked immediately, but the sheer numbers overwhelmed them, forcing them to flee once more. As they dashed through the door, they were surrounded by guards. The broker slammed shut a fiberglass door, but it was clear it wouldn't hold long. Vicky quickly hatched an escape plan. She grabbed Yuya's gun, smashed a window, then broke the glass on the other two sides. The wild wind outside almost blew them away, but they managed to grab heavy objects to anchor themselves to safety. They clung on until the storm finally subsided. Once the danger passed, the group resumed their journey toward the tall tower. They fought their way down the corridors and finally arrived at the laboratory. Yamato's heart swelled with joy when he saw the vaccine before him. But then a chilling realization struck everyone. Many infected people were inside the lab. The broker discovered his missing brother among them. It turned out they had all been secretly captured and used as test subjects for the vaccine. However, the vaccine was still in its early stages, and as a result, everyone had been infected by the virus, which had mutated into various types of monsters. At that moment, Jibiki stepped forward and asked if a man named Shinji was among them. The broker's brother suddenly remembered that Shinji was the lead researcher on the vaccine. The broker wanted to take his brother with him, but his brother didn't want to live half human, half monster. He begged the team to end his suffering. Shaking, the broker held a dagger, but couldn't bring himself to act. Finally, Jibiki, understanding his pain, used the dagger to grant his last wish. With heavy hearts, the group regrouped and prepared to press on. Meanwhile, Shinji learned that zombies had already infiltrated the 30th floor and decided to abandon all civilians below. Calling for researchers to return to the lab, he was surprised when Jibiki's voice suddenly crackled over the intercom. It turned out Jibiki had infiltrated the tall tower to rescue his daughter, Future, who had been taken when the disaster first struck. Jibiki's wife had been infected, but not mutated. However, after giving birth to Future, her condition rapidly deteriorated. To allow her a dignified death as a human, Jibiki had been forced to kill her. News of Future's natural immunity to the virus spread, and she was hailed as the chosen one, making her a prime target for the tall tower, where she was forcibly taken. Upon learning Shinji's true intentions, he made a bold promise. Anyone who could capture Jibiki would be rewarded with the successfully developed vaccine. Wasting no time, Shinji mobilized all tower guards, deploying them everywhere to hunt down Jibiki. As the steel door slowly began to close, the group sprinted toward it, but to their shock, Yuya, desperate to obtain the vaccine, suddenly shot Jibiki, trapping him and Yamato inside the closing door. Few knew this was a lie concocted by Shinji. In reality, he had not succeeded in creating the vaccine. In an effort to accelerate the research, Shinji decided to extract large quantities of blood from Future. Tragically, his plan was overheard by Ao, who, unable to bear seeing Future treated as mere experimental fodder, secretly whisked her away. But before they could escape, zombies had already breached the building. Ao was forced to flee alone, only to be blocked by a steel panel. At that moment, Yamato, having tied a rope around himself, jumped from the high floor, shot out the window, and descended to the lower level. He managed to open the steel door in the control center, unexpectedly saving both his girlfriend Ao and Future. After ensuring their safety, Ao hid Future in a closet and bravely fought off the incoming zombies alone. However, inexperienced in combat, she was quickly overwhelmed and knocked down. In the critical moment, Yamato arrived just in time to save her. Vicky, seeing the girl before him, immediately suspected she was his daughter. But since they had only spent a few hours together, Future did not recognize Jibiki as her father. When he reached out to her, she turned away in fear and nestled into Ao's arms. At that moment, one of Yuya's subordinates returned to report that a large group of guards was heading their way, urging them to escape immediately. In a desperate bid to give his daughter a chance, Jibiki decided to lead the guards away alone. Yamato, unwilling to leave him, insisted on accompanying him. To their surprise, Yuya's subordinate betrayed them, suddenly pointing a gun at Ao with the intention of taking Future and exchanging her for the vaccine with the leader. Meanwhile, Jibiki and Yamato were ambushed by Yuya, forcing them to shelter in a nearby lab. Through the glass, the two watched Ao being captured and realized Future had already been taken back to the research lab. Vicky immediately raced toward the lab with Yuya in pursuit. However, just as Jibiki had managed to deal with Yuya, Yamato, who had caught up, shot the guards. Using Ao's life as leverage, they demanded Yamato bring back Jibiki. With no other option, Yamato obeyed. Jibiki continued fleeing, using zombies to block bullets. By the time Yamato reached the upper floors, Jibiki was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Yuya's subordinate had brought Future before the leader, demanding they inject her with the vaccine. The failed experiment once again mutated her into a monster, and the leader quickly ended her life with a single bullet. Shortly thereafter, Jibiki found his way to the research lab. Bombs had been planted inside the building in anticipation, to be used as leverage to force the leader to hand over Future. The leader explained that Future was fundamental to humanity's survival, and even offered Jibiki the chance to live in the tall tower with the best privileges if he agreed to cooperate. Faced with the choice between saving the world or saving Future, Jibiki didn't hesitate for a second. He chose his daughter. The leader, upon learning the truth, was struck dumb. The savior he had believed in turned out to be nothing but a carefully constructed lie. Jibiki fell to the ground, riddled with bullets. The leader, heartbroken, left immediately with his men, abandoning the others to their fate. To everyone's amazement, Shinji, who had been shot, was not dead. He grabbed a shard of glass and crawled toward Future, blaming her for his fate. Just when things seemed hopeless, Jibiki, who appeared dead, suddenly revived and stopped Shinji. A closer look at Jibiki's face revealed that he had injected himself with the virus to gain immortality, just like the others, in order to save Future. Driven by his unbreakable faith, the same faith that had allowed his wife to give birth to Future and mutate, Jibiki, after subduing Shinji, urged Yamato to take Future and flee. As soon as they removed the bombs they had planted earlier, they detonated them in a massive explosion. 20 years later, a small team appears in a desolate, abandoned desert and rescues an elderly man on the verge of dying of thirst. Led by this old man, the team returns to the research facility where it all began. However, when the old man removes his bandages, they are stunned to discover that the person inside is the leader who had escaped by helicopter all those years ago. What he had not anticipated was that a bomb had been planted on the helicopter, trapping him there. Future, intent on avenging Jibiki, considers killing him, but seeing his seemingly genuine remorse, hesitates, feeling a pang of sympathy. However, it turns out to be a ruse, a manipulation by the leader. Fortuitously, Yamato reacts quickly shoots him and kills him. Shortly thereafter, they find Jibiki, now mutated, impaled on an iron beam in the center of the ruined building, unable to move, and having remained in the same position for 20 years. Future's mission at last is to free him from his suffering.